The title of this lecture is The Church and the Scientific Revolution. Before we look at science, I think we need to consider the term scientific revolution. What is a revolution? A revolution is a radical, fundamental change in some area of life. Revolutions occur in politics, economics, and even intellectual life. The scientific revolution could be defined as a radical, fundamental change in how we look at the natural cosmic order. This is exactly what happened in the 16th and 17th centuries with the work of two astronomers, Nicolaus Copernicus and Galileo Galilei. We begin with Nicolaus Copernicus. Copernicus was a canon in the Catholic Church. Now, the word canon is somewhat ambiguous and needs explaining. It refers to someone with responsibilities in the church serving on the staff of a bishop or some other ecclesiastical prelate, and who presumably will one day become a priest. We do not know for certain if Copernicus was ever ordained to the priesthood. However, as a canon, he studied canon law at the University of Bologna in Italy. He also studied medicine, receiving his medical degree from the University of Padua. At the same time, he developed a keen interest in science, particularly astronomy. While Copernicus was a man of many abilities, he is of course remembered for his contributions to astronomy. While he contributed no original discoveries to the science, his work was nevertheless revolutionary in that he provided a new way of looking at the solar system, a new model or paradigm for astronomical investigation. The model he inherited from the medieval world dated all the way back to the ancient Greek astronomer Ptolemy, and posited what we call a geocentric system, meaning that the Earth was a stable and unmoving center of a system of revolving heavenly bodies, that is, the sun, the moon, and the planets. In other words, the sun, the moon, the stars, and the planets all revolved around the Earth. What Copernicus proposed was a heliocentric system, in which not the Earth, but the sun was the center, surrounded by a revolving Earth and other planets. While his theory touched off lively interest and debate among scientific and ecclesiastical circles, Copernicus's research was highly esteemed by many in the Church, including Pope Clement VII and Pope Paul III. His 6 books on the revolutions of the celestial orbits, which definitively set forth his theory, was published the year of his death. Now we come to Galileo Galilei. Galileo's name is often invoked in arguments that the Catholic Church is anti-science. The charge comes from what came to be known as the Galileo Affair. Galileo, like Copernicus, began by studying medicine, then became interested in astronomy. Galileo went beyond Copernicus in that he made new discoveries with a telescope that supported Copernicus's model of a heliocentric planetary system. He discovered 4 moons orbiting Jupiter. This was significant in that it had been assumed prior to this that, if the Earth itself were not stationary but orbiting another body, such as the Sun, then the Earth would leave its own moon behind when it revolved. The instance of Jupiter and its moons refuted this assumption. Jupiter, heretofore believed to be revolving around the Earth, could move and not lose its moons. And if that were the case, then it was possible for the Earth to likewise move and not lose its moons. Galileo also discovered different phases in Venus, which suggested that Venus, and likewise Earth, revolved around the Sun. So whence this Galileo affair? How did Galileo get into trouble with the Church? His theories were initially welcomed with enthusiasm. He was given an audience with Pope Paul V to further demonstrate his findings, and the work of Jesuit astronomers supported, but did not definitively prove, that his findings were true. In 1612, he published his findings in his Letters on the Sunspots. So what exactly was the problem? The problem was that Galileo insisted that his findings were established laws, established facts, not just highly probable theories. These theories, however, seem to contradict the received understanding of certain passages in Scripture. For example, Psalm 93, which reads, "The world is established, it shall never be moved," and also Ecclesiastes, "The sun rises and the sun goes down, and hastens to the place where it rises." In light of these apparent contradictions of sacred Scripture, in 1616 the Church ordered Galileo to stop teaching the Copernican theory as established fact. He could, however, continue to propose it as a hypothesis. In 1624, Galileo was honored by Pope Urban VIII for his contributions to scientific inquiry. The Pope called Galileo a man whose fame shines in the sky and is spread over the whole world. Things seemed to be going well for Galileo until 1632, when he published his Dialogue on the Great World Systems. He dedicated the work to Pope Urban VIII, the same pope who had praised him so lavishly 8 years earlier. At the same time, however, he asserted that the Copernican system was established fact. As a consequence, in 1633, Galileo was tried by the Inquisition and declared suspected of heresy. He was sentenced to house arrest, but was still allowed to continue to write. So even with the penalty imposed by the Inquisition, Galileo continued to do scientific research with the blessing of the Church. So why was the Church so seemingly harsh with Galileo? We need to be aware of the historical context. Galileo was making his bold assertions at a time when Protestants were accusing Catholics of compromising the authority of Scripture. Martin Luther, the Protestant reformer, had earlier described Copernicus as a fool who went against Holy Writ. This climate of suspicion, animosity, and even open warfare between Catholics and Protestants in the 17th century meant that the Church had to be extremely prudent in its handling of revolutionary ideas.